So thank you once again, Anoja, for the invitation, and Professor Kolita for hosting today, and Samudra for the coordination, and everyone else who is present today. So let me start by first sharing a few points I noted down from one of a really fantastic talk I heard recently from Venerable Dr. M. Punnaji Maha thero. So I hadn't come across this thero before, and therefore, when I listened to one talk, I was so impressed by the simplicity of the way this thero explained really profound topics. I actually Google searched on this thero, and what I found was, other than the fact that he was born in 1920s, which means he's quite elderly now, he was a medical doctor before becoming fully ordained, and also has gone on to study many other things. So that is why the name goes as Venerable Dr. M. Punnaji Maha thero. I will post in the group the talk that I am referring to. I find it one of the most clear talks I have heard so far in Dhamma. I know we should be grateful for hearing it even now. I just wish that, you know, when we were learning Buddhism for O-level back in school, I wish this kind of people set the syllabus, because it would have been, Buddhism would have been everybody's favorite subject had that been the case. So this thero was talking about the Paticcasamuppada, and I'm not, of course, going to talk about that because it is quite a lengthy topic. He was talking about how emotions create problems, and I think we all know that very well. So he was referring to Sigmund Freud, who is known as the modern father of psychology, where Sigmund Freud had mentioned that humans are a species of the animal world, right? So I think we all can relate to that. And what is common between humans and animals is the whole fighting, quarreling, getting angry nature. And that he refers to that it's coming from the emotions that we have that makes us get angry and fight and quarrel a lot. Now, Punnaji thero then refers to what the Buddha said about the subject, right? So Buddha used Buddha described the same thing as Sigmund Freud, but in a much more advanced way. He used two terms to describe the same phenomena. So he used the term chitta to refer to the emotional side that makes us behave and act common to animals, right? So the chitta part is responsible for the emotions that we feel, and the emotions are responsible for us getting greedy for things, getting angry, getting scared, everything that Sigmund Freud described, the animal nature of humans coming from our emotions. Then he said there's another side to humans that is specific to humans, not to animals, and that is the ability for rational thinking. So very simply put, we can do mathematics, whereas maybe very rarely, probably you can see in what do you call magic shows and all. Maybe animals can do a little bit of mathematics, but I think you get the drift that humans possibly are the only species can do rational thinking, right? So what is this rational thinking that the Buddha is referring to? And this rational thinking he referred to as Dhamma, right? So he said humans are able to differentiate between what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong, what is true and what is false. And based on this, he said, humans have rational thinking, and that differentiates us from animals. However, he noted that some humans can be low on this ability for rational thinking, and to think and reason things out. And that is when you see that in some humans, the kind of behaviors they display are actually closer to animal than to human. So what was the Buddha trying to do? So the Buddha very simply was trying to show humans how to completely overcome the animal part that is present in the humans and become a full human being. All right. So, and that is, of course, called enlightenment, becoming an arahant. Venerable Punnaji describes this as how the Buddha explained it as overcoming the animal part that is present in humans and transcending completely to the human part. You are full time on the human part. Now the problem for us is that we play in both areas, right? I don't know if you remember, I mentioned before, scientifically they have found out that our brain is divided into 3 parts. It's called the triune brain, and there they call out a reptilian brain, a mammalian brain, and the prefrontal cortex, right? So the reptilian brain, they say, is like, imagine you are like a crocodile. You are all your eating, sleeping, and mating requirements come from there. The mammalian brain, which is the way the chimpanzees and all are, is where you learn and you have memory and the emotions, all of that comes there. And the prefrontal cortex is what is the rational thinking side of the brain, where you can strategize, you can solve for problems, and you can think ahead, like insurance, right? I think insurance is the best example. Insurance is when you take a protection, pay some money for an accident that may or may not. So you pay some money today for an accident that may or may not happen tomorrow or in a year's time, right? How do you explain that to a chimpanzee or a dog? That shows that the prefrontal cortex is something very specific to humans, that ability to rationalize, strategize, think forward, and take decisions today for something in the future. That is a very, very advanced brain. Now, there may be much more advanced brains in the universe, but at least on this planet, this is the most advanced brain. Now, what I find interesting is that the Buddha figured all of this out 2,500 years ago. This triune brain. So I have friends who are doctors, and they have told me that they have not come across a triune brain in medical college. So therefore, this must be more social science related science, and not real brain surgery, right? So, so the Buddha obviously also understood this triune brain and the prefrontal cortex when he said that the human side is about being rational. Now, the whole becoming enlightened is, the problem with humans are, we are wired. So this is what the evolutionary scientists have found out. Even though we have a prefrontal cortex where you can do rational thinking, where you have the ability to differentiate between what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong, what is true and what is false. Problem is, we are not wired to that brain. We are wired to the crocodile and the chimpanzee brain. Right? Now, in order to shift gears and use that rational brain, you need to pause. And this is where mindfulness has become such a big industry in the world. People earn a lot of money by teaching mindfulness in the West. It is because by being mindful, by just pausing for 5 minutes or 2 minutes, you can actually shift gears. You can shift from the natural wiring of crocodile and chimpanzee brain to the prefrontal cortex, right? Now, based on what Punnaji Thero is saying, based on what the Buddha has declared, being fully wired into the prefrontal cortex, being a fully human being, is what arahathood is. So therefore, from evolutionary science point of view, it is about us shifting our natural wiring from what we were born with, which is a wiring to a more animalistic state, to the more human state. And that is why the Buddha emphasized on meditation so much, because this is all a game in the mind. And through meditation, through practice, you can gradually shift this wiring. So this is what Punnaji Thero is also referring to, and of course he's referring to what the Buddha said, right? So so what is this animalistic nature? So the Buddha made it simple, and why the Buddha is such a great teacher is that the simplicity in which he then presents the problem. So what he said was, look, the animalistic nature can be summarized in three ways: lobha, dvesha, and moha, right? So lobha is lust, or your greed for things. Hatred, of course, we all understand. And then moha, the delusion of self. And this is where all the selfishness of humans come from, this idea that there is a permanent entity. So what the Buddha said was, if you want to transcend your animal nature and become permanently wired into a fully human nature, you need to transcend lobha, dvesha, moha. So long story short, honestly, I haven't told you anything new, right? You all are very advanced in the Dhamma journey. You all know that we need to transcend lobha, dvesha, moha. So really nothing new, right? Then the difference between the Buddha and any psychotherapist. Now, what does a psychotherapist do? Because everybody thinks of Buddha as one of the greatest psychiatrists in the world, right? So he also, Venerable Punnaji draws a kind of a parallel. He was saying, look, a psychotherapist, what he tries to do, he or she tries to do, is to bring an abnormal person to a normal state, right? Because we go and meet a psychotherapist when we are not feeling normal. So the psychotherapist is trying to bring an abnormal state person to a normal state. Whereas what the Buddha is trying to do is trying to bring a normal state person to a supernormal state. Supernormal state being this full human being, being a full human being, right? And of course, then the Buddha said, now for this, you need to do a paradigm shift, right? A paradigm shift is a shift in the way we see the world, a shift in the way we see life, a shift in the way we see ourselves. So that brings me, therefore, to today's topic, the whole Cittanupassana part of it, because in order to do this paradigm shift, it's about observing what is happening in our mind. So again, I'm again referring to a talk by Punnaji Thero, where he says, let's start with what we can see and what we can hear, because it's always good to start from the beginning, or the easiest place to start. It's always good to start from the easy place so that you can work towards the more advanced things, right? So the question he's asking is, when we open our eyes, what do we see? Yeah. Now, again, referring back to O-level science, right? I always felt O-level was an absolutely useless exam, but now I realize why O-level subjects are so important, because we were taught about how the eye is constructed during our O-level studies, right? So we all know that what do we see? We see colors and we see shapes, right? And that is all that our eyes see, colors and shapes. And through these colors and shapes, an image is created, and that is what we see. Now, rest of it happens in the mind. The eye as a faculty brings the colors and the shapes and shows us a combination of the colors and the shapes. That's all that the eye does. The rest of it happens in our consciousness. And if you think of Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, the whole, the perception part of it, Sanya, right? Now, the Sanya will then tell you about what you are seeing, all right? So, for example, I am having my video on. We can see Professor Kolita, we can see Samudra, and we can see my dad over there, right? Okay, we can see Jiva as well. So you can see 5 people here, right? So let us take myself. So you can see me, right? Now, the colors and the shapes that is coming into your eye shows, what does it show? So if you ignore the background of my Zoom for a moment, and if you just focus on me, right, you can see an oval shape, right? If you take the face as oval, then you can see a brown skin. right? And black hair. So these are colors and shapes that you see. But thanks to your perception or the sanya, you know that this is Nadesha, right? And with that perception of Nadesha comes emotions, feelings. Now, Samudra and I are besties, right? So if you ask Samudra, when you see Nadesha, what kind of emotions come to your mind? I would hazard a guess that loving feelings, friendly feelings come to Samudra's mind, right? Now, when I think of the servants of the Buddha, with our honored president Anoja and the likes of Professor Kolita here and Srima and all of you, right? Manori. My first impression of you all when I met you all was what a elegant and eloquent group of people, because I am associated with various Buddhist groups in temples, and they are hardly what you call elegant and eloquent, right? They are very noisy. They fight a lot. They everybody wants brownie points and display quite normal, ordinary human behavior. But with you all, I was always surprised to see the elegance and the eloquency, the refinedness. And I thought finally I'm seeing a group of people who are really practicing the Dhamma, right? You all speak softly. I have been with you now for more than a year. I have never heard you argue, right? You all have different points of views. You all disagree a lot with each other, but it's done in such a soft words, with such politeness, with respect to each other. So for me, I have told this to Anoja, that you as a group, servants of the Buddha as a group, the perception, the sanya, the label I have is real sons and daughters of the sasana, right? Real representation of everything that the Buddha spoke about. Yeah. Now, see, that is a perception. Now somebody who doesn't know about the servants of the Buddha, and if they're invited to a talk and if they see you, they will see people, right? And they might form their own perceptions if they don't know you. So what I'm trying to show you here is what the eye gives me is light and color and shape. The rest of the story I have made in my own mind based on my personal experiences, right? And that is what life is all about. So the Buddha understood that your sense doors will give you real time, real data, right? So your eyes will give you color, shapes. Your ears will give you sound, right? Your nose will give you smell. Your tongue will give you taste. Your body will give you various touch sensations. And your mind will give you thoughts, right? And moods. These are all real-time data inputs. Now, humans then make a story out of it, right? In that story, we create a lot of grief to ourselves because that story, number one, it's based on our own experiences, which we then believe is the truth of the world, right? So for example, Samudra and I are besties. Now, I'm sure Samudra, in your life and in my life, there are many people who dislike us, right? And that's normal. There were people who dislike the Buddha, and the Buddha said it's impossible for everyone in the world to love you. It's impossible. Don't even try, right? Now, because I like Samudra, I think she's a good girl, right? Now, somebody else may not like Samudra and may not think she's a good girl. Now, who is right? Am I right or is the other person right? And in such situations where the Buddha said this, there is no right, there is no wrong. It's only a point of view, right? But because of the delusion part of it, the moha, right? We think that my point of view is the truth of the world. And therefore, we are willing to wage a war on my point of view, right? And then if somebody comes and says, oh, you know, Samudra, useless girl and all, because my point of view was Samudra is the truth of the world, I will be up in arms. right? I may quarrel, I may slap the person, and Samudra doesn't even know that I'm fighting with somebody on her behalf, right? But I'm just simplifying what really is happening in the world, yeah? So then Venerable Punnaji then asked us the question, right? We open our eyes and what do we see? We see colors. We hear sounds with our ears. We smell things through our nose. We taste through our tongue. We feel the touch, right? We put all these things together and we create an object, right? And first and foremost, we created an object that we call ourselves me, myself, my body, my mind, right? And then we create other objects and give it names: my mother, my father, my husband, my wife, my son, my daughter, my bestie, and so on, my boss, right? And if you think of your own name, somebody else gave it to you, right? I always had issue with this. I always had issue with name is such an important thing. How come I didn't have a say in my name? Somebody else decided. I remember when I was about 10 years old, I told my mother. So my name is Chamani Nadisha, right? I said, I don't like the word Chamani. I don't mind Nadisha. I want to change it. And my mother was like, are you mad? It's in your birth certificate. You can't change it now. And I said, this is so unfair. Nobody consulted me about my own name. Right? Anyway, back to the topic. So our name even isn't not ours. Somebody else has given it to us, but we have now built a story around that name, me and myself. Now, what are we doing with this whole idea of me, right? So we have created, there are three things we have created. We have created an object, which is my body, my mind, myself, and that is occupying space and it is occupying time. Now, occupying space, you can understand, right? Now I am 5'2" and overweight. I will not mention my weight, but that is taking a certain volume in this planet, right? So I need a certain volumetric space, right? And we always talk about how many rooms do you need in a house. Recently, somebody was telling me about somebody went overseas and saw some rich house which had 23 rooms. And the guy was talking about it like it's a big deal. And I was like, you know, the problem with a 23-room house is you only occupy about 2 square feet at any given time. What are you going to do with all that space? Even if you're occupying a room, it's just one room at a time. Why do you need the other 22 rooms, right? So, okay, anyway, I shouldn't be judgmental. Back to the topic. All right. So we occupy space, and typically we need about the space you need is your height and your width and your depth, right? That's all you need. But that is not the problem. The problem is we occupy time. And this is the most critical piece, right? We occupy time. And what does this mean? What this means is, right, when you were born, right, that is your past. When you die, that is your future. What is now is your present. We are occupying this entire spectrum. We are occupying this entire spectrum of time and seeing and believing, really seeing and believing ourselves to be one entity occupying this entire spectrum of time, right? And I know, if you take me, I know this is the one thing that is preventing me from enlightenment, because this is where I'm stuck. When I look at my baby photos, I believe that is me. How can I not believe that is me? Now, Ajahn Brahmansha Hamdro often says, you look at your baby photo, that baby is dead. I'm like, no way. That baby is cute and that baby is still here inside me. Okay. Then I look at my teenage photos. Yeah. And Ajahn Brahm says that teenage is dead. And I no way. That teenage is fun. And that teenage is still inside me. Right. So I can't step away from that entire spectrum of time. And if I think, I don't know when we are going to die, right? But if we just anyway believe that, you know, people generally go to 80, 90, whatever, we are all occupying that entire spectrum. We occupy that entire spectrum, right? And that is where we feel that there is an entity called myself occupying a spectrum of time. That is where we get a false sense of a permanent self. The permanent entity is coming from the spectrum of time, in us occupying a spectrum of time. I didn't realize this until Venerable Punnaji put this across so clearly, right? That I'm occupying an entire spectrum of time. Because look, we know the theory. We know that we are living now in the present moment. We know that our consciousness is getting born and dying in such a fast way. You can't even measure it. It's beyond human comprehension, the speed in which it is happening. All the doctors on this call will tell about how your cells are getting born and dying, right? And therefore, Ajahn Brahm says, look, many of you may not understand the science behind it, but in a very simple way, why don't you think of it like this? Today morning I was born, and tonight when I go to sleep, I die. Tomorrow morning I'm born again. Right? He said, at least try to think of it like that. But honestly, I find it difficult to think like that, because I'm so attached to this concept of self to think that I'm going to die tonight and then get born again. You know, it's a bit unnerving, right? So that is the problem, delusion, right? And that is why in the Paticca it starts by saying, what does it say? Avidya Pachaya Sankara, right? Avidya, this whole moha, is what causes us to, Sankara is formation of karmic, new karmas. So this delusion of self makes us think and act and do in a certain manner that makes us form new karma, which causes us to have the bhava, and the bhava causes us to get born again. Now, I told Anoja that I want to do this as a practice. So the practice is simple, right? The practice is simple. Look at the screen, pick somebody on the screen, anybody, right? And just look at the person and try to think about the reality, because very clearly there is a reality and there is a perceived world. There are two worlds here, a reality world and a perceived world. The reality world is what you see is colors and shapes. The perceived world is, you see Professor Kolika, a dear friend, a very learned gentleman. You see Samudrai, a bestie, right? You see my dad, who is a excellent meditation master. You see Jiva, who is such a sweetheart. Jiva, give us a nice smile. There we go, right? So that is the perceived world, right? Now, what the Buddha said was, can you spend a little bit of time and in the real world and see the reality for what it is, right? Because when you see the reality for, and then in order to see the reality for what it is, only a human can do this, because you need that rational thinking mind to be able to see the reality as it is. All right. So the best way to practice this is to take the easy senses. So you can sit down. Now, most of our meditation we do with our eyes closed, right? But this is one small practice that you can do with your eyes open, right? Look at something. It could be an object or it could be a person, right? And see, try to think rationally, what does my eye see and what does my chitta see? The chitta is that emotional part which makes up the story, right? What does my eye see? What does my chitta see, right? And if you want to do this, keeping your eyes closed, yeah, out of your 6 sense doors, what are your 6 sense doors? Your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and your mind. When you close your eyes, right, 1 sense door is closed. And assuming that you are not eating or drinking, your tongue sense door is closed. So 4 sense doors are open. So you can close your eyes and just focus on, what do I hear? What do I smell? What do I feel on the body? And what thoughts are coming to the mind? Now, when I teach this at Dhamma school, I make it even more simple. I say, leave the thinking side aside, because thoughts coming to the mind is very complex, right? Just focus on, what do I hear? What do I smell? What do I feel on the body? So for example, now, it's a bit of a warm Saturday afternoon, and I'm sitting under a fan, so I can feel the fan on my body. All right. Before that, a mosquito came and bit me. So that is what I mean. What do I feel on my body? Right. In terms of smell, now that it's 5 o'clock, I don't smell anything. But once dinner starts, somebody starts making dinner, I might smell some aroma. What do I hear? So usually I hear the dog, I hear the next door neighbor who likes music. And today, because I'm giving this talk, thankfully, family is cooperative and sitting and listening. Otherwise, it's quite a noisy household, right? Samudra can empathize, I think. Samudra has a son. So then there's a lot of things to hear, right? Right now, if I'm thinking, what do I hear? Actually, I don't hear anything, right? So using your sense doors of hearing and what do you feel on your body, you can actually practice looking at what is the reality and what is the perception, right? So let's take a sound. So usually when I close my eyes and I'm trying to do some other meditation, I have a really cute, really good looking Labrador, and she's a purebred, so she has a really beautiful voice. And when she barks, I start thinking, oh, what a beautiful voice, right? Because I really love dogs. So then there is a moment to practice this. What I heard was just a sound. The rest of the story, cute, fat, beautiful Labrador, purebred, good voice, that is the perception, the sanya, right? That is where the attachment is coming. Because what is there to get attached to a sound? Yeah. We are getting attached to a story. Yeah. So when I look at my family, when I see my daughter, when I see my son, my eyes see shapes and colors, right? My eyes see a bundle of atoms, a bundle of cells. My eyes see a being, because the being was born, is destined to die. What is there to get attached, right? But in my mind, that's my baby girl, my baby boy, my pana, my vastua, blah, blah, blah. And if my pana and vastua dies, I'll be dead too. Of course, I won't be dead, but I'll be inside, something will die inside me, right? That is attachment. That is our inability to see real time, real data and understand the real life. And we have got carried away with a story that we have created for ourselves. Okay, so I don't know whether I am over time. I could stop here. Sorry, I was going to make you all practice. So I'll give it to you.
We have time. We have time.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
We have
5 minutes. Yeah, okay.
No. Go take your time.
We'll do a 5-minute practice where, okay, sit comfortably now, right? Okay, everybody sit comfortably. And sit comfortably means your spine should be straight, right? Your neck should be straight. You can bob your neck about to see whether it is straight, because sometimes only when you bob your neck, you know whether it is straight or not. And keep your feet on the ground, right? Keep your hands however it is comfortable, right? And gently close your eyes. Now that your eyes are closed, one sense door is shut down. Assuming that you are not eating or drinking anything, your tongue sense door is shut down. So let us focus on the rest of the sense doors. What do you hear? Now, if you are hearing something, try to use that prefrontal cortex or the rational thinking human brain to distinguish between I'm hearing a sound, but also I can see the story. Can you see both? Because I think it's very, very important to be able to see both, right? And then if you're feeling something in your body, right? Like in my case, so nice, the fan is, cooling me down. What is the real-time data. It's a touch, a sparshaya. What is the story? The story is, I like the fan. You know, on a nice, warm Saturday, the fan is a blessing. Yeah. Can you see them both? Okay. And then do you smell anything? Right? Do you see the data? Do you see the story? And your thoughts. Thoughts are just thoughts. They will come and they will go. And this is complex. If you wish to, you can try the thought part as well. If not, just stay in what can you hear, what can you smell, what can you feel. If you wish to, you can observe your thoughts as well. That a thought came, it's just a thought. And what is the story behind the thought? A mood has come, a state of mood. It's just a state of mood. What is the story behind it? Okay, so I'll keep my timer for 5 minutes. Let us practice this for 5 minutes, and then you can share your experience of how did you see the two stories, the real story and the real world and the perceived world, the story that you are telling yourself. All right, let's do this for 5 minutes. You can start now. you can gently open your eyes. So before I ask you what your experience was like, let me share with you why this is important and how you can use this in real life. So recently at work, I was involved in a conversation with two other people at work, and it was getting, our ideas were not matching, and it was getting emotional, it was getting difficult. And I realized that I was getting very, very, what do you say, frustrated. I was getting angry, and I almost felt like I'm getting a headache because it was difficult. And then suddenly I remembered this part of the Dhamma. And while the conversation was still going on, I paused for a moment and I thought, what is going on here, right? I asked myself, what do I see? I see colors and shapes, right, which form images of people. I hear sound. I'm hearing sound waves, right? And then I was thinking, I see myself included 3 bundles of atoms that is continuously changing. And suddenly it dawned on me, you know what? There's no problem here. There's no problem. That calmed me down, and I could start again, get into the conversation from a place of kindness, from a place of patience, from a place of care, because I could see now that I am calm. I could see that the other two are very agitated. So this is the benefit of being able to see both stories, training your mind to see both stories. What is the real-time data that is coming in, and what is the perceived world that you are living in, that you have created for yourself. All right, so let me pause there. So let me ask a couple of you in the 5 minutes, what was it like? Professor Kolita, would you like to share what it was like? What were you doing in that 5 minutes?
Dreaming. Anyway, I had my eyes closed and followed the instructions, seated and trying to find out. Naturally, there were no visual inputs, but one thing which was really dominant was the sounds. I could also hear the sound coming from the ceiling fan, and then the sound was there. Then I recognized it as a sound coming from the ceiling fan. And additionally, there were some sounds coming from outside the house. That was, again, I recognized as the chirping of birds. So while this was going on, a little later, suddenly a sound came from the computer also. The recording has ceased. Then my attention went on to that. I was wondering, what the hell, why is this? Giving this command, now I was trying to figure out how that happened. Then I realized maybe the computer records only if somebody is talking. Now everyone has stopped talking. You know, your talk was no longer being delivered, and maybe the computer is sensitive to that. Or else somebody has manually stopped the recording, which I thought was unlikely because only you and Samudra has control over the recording. And unlikely that you would have stopped it because I don't know, because you was supposed to be meditating. So you see the one little auditory input and the thoughts went after that, trying to figure out what was happening. Why is this happening? It's something like that. Basically, it was around those experiences.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you, Professor Kolita. In fact, I think the internet would have temporarily dropped from my side, and then it connected automatically. It caused this recording to stop and start again. I think that's what happened. And I don't think science has gone to the level that you explained, where the computer decides that I have stopped talking and stops recording. But I do wish that that intelligent level will come one day. But thank you so much. Thank you for that. Jiva, would you like to share something? You're on mute, Jiva. Jiva, you are on mute.
Okay,
Yes, can hear now, Jiva.
is
Yes.
that? Well, I'm not very conversant with all this, quite new to the subject and quite new to following these things, but your subject was very important and it was very impressively conducted. And I tried to follow.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Samudra, any input? Thank you, Jiva.
Yes, so like you said, I have lots of noise in my house, and sometimes I escape to my cousins so that I can have peace and quiet. So my mother is walking right now, and when I heard her footsteps, my eyes are closed, and I immediately went back to the time I had to take her for an echo because she was complaining of time. All these things, and the doctor said you have to walk, rain or sunshine. So now she's walking. It's about to rain. She's walking inside the house. So all of that is happening. But because I know, okay, now don't go there, immediately I brought my attention to the breath. And so it keeps going and coming. Someone is constructing something, so you hear the noise. But I'm now training myself to not go there. So even with the breath, I don't know for what reason. I'll talk to you later about it. In my mind, I'm escaping into a cave. Okay. And I'm very calm and peaceful there no matter what happens. So there's this like a fan light inside the cave. There's a Ginimalaya, like a fire, and I'm right in front of it with my eyes closed. And so that's where I'm escaping in my mind. I don't know whether I'm normal or abnormal. So, but it's very calm and very still, Nadisha. Yeah. So that's happening presently. But of course, that is when my mind is, when my attention is not on the breath. But I'm not sleeping also. So I'll talk to you later about what this is. Maybe I need guidance. I don't know. So that's what happened during this 5 minutes. But like Jiva said, it's an impressive, very simple talk to understand. It's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Samudra. And you shouldn't talk to me. I think you should talk to a psychiatrist. Just kidding. I couldn't help that, Samudra. Sorry. I joke around with Samudra. She's fine. She's a best friend. Also, Samudra, this is why the Buddha said that siyalu pruthakjanayo unmattakayo, right? So we all are weird in our own way. So absolutely, we'll chat later. So anybody else wants to share anything on the call? Anyone else? I can hear you. Professor Kaulitya Samudra, can you hear Anuja?
Can hear.
Yes.
Can hear.
Okay, perfect. Go for it, Anuja.
Right. So I was focusing on what you said, what is the real-time data and what is the perceived story.
Yes.
Right. So real-time data, I was getting three different inputs. One was the sound of the fan and also the feeling of the fan. And the second real-time data I was getting was the ticking of the clock.
Right.
And third real-time data I was getting was some voices coming from somewhere.
Right.
So I have to say that when I looked at the perceived data for each of these things, with the fan, I was getting the tanha because I like the fan and all that. So the story was, a positive story and the story arising.
Right.
And then with regard to the clock, it was totally neutral sound, neutral everything. And then with regard to the voices I was hearing, I was getting a bit irritated.
Right.
So the perceived story was one of irritation. So I saw the Vyapada there.
Fantastic.
As the perceived story, I saw three different things with those three different kinds of real-time data. And I saw the reality that I am creating this feeling of tanha, feeling of neutrality, and also feeling of rivasa.
Fantastic, fantastic, Anoja. I mean, a round of applause for you actually, because I was teaching, I teach the Maha Satipatthana Sutra these days to grade 11 and 12 as part of the YMBA syllabus. And in that, under Cittanupassana, the technique refers to observe your mind and ask yourself the question, is my mind in a state of tanha or in a state of no tanha? Is my mind in a state of dvesha or in a state of no dvesha? Is my mind in a state of moha, delusion, or in a state of non-delusion? Is my mind in a state of torpor, laziness, or in a state of non-torpor? And it goes on to a few other things like, is my mind in a state of dhyana? Is my mind concentrated or is it not concentrated, and so on. But when I'm listening to you, what you did now was absolutely the Cittanupassana in the fullest form. That is to observe the real data and also observe the perceived world that you have created for yourself and recognize through that perception whether it is a state of lobha, whether it is a state of dvesha, or whether it's a state of moha. So full rounds to you, Anuja. A+. A+.
I had to also add a little conclusion to that, because I also thought now the reason why I'm getting dvesha and the reason why I'm feeling like that is because I'm this me mind business. I want to control my environment to my liking. So therefore, it is the controlled nature of this me and my business that is creating these problems. I saw that also.
Fantastic, fantastic. Anuj, I mean, tomorrow, day after, you will be enlightened. Give us a call when it happens, okay? Because this is the path, Anuj. This is the path. And our ability. So I think what we are missing is, I think everyone on this call, you all know this already, right? Because most of the things that the Buddha said is so intuitive. The Buddha spoke the Dhamma and explained it. And he clearly said that what I'm explaining is for an average human being with average intelligence, right? And when I see the titles on this call, doctors and professors and teachers and whatnots, you all should have been enlightened yesterday, basically, right? The fact that you are not enlightened is because you are not paying attention. And that's what Venerable Ajahn Chah says. He says, just pay attention. Just pay attention. And what you did now for 5 minutes, Anuja, you paid attention, right? And you see for that 5 minutes, oops, oh no, the call dropped. Wait, let me just get Anuja back. For that 5 minutes, okay, the call dropped and dialogue. It's either internet or something. Yeah, paying attention, it's such an amazing thing, right? So I think anybody else wants to add anything? That was beautiful. I'll try to get Anuja back online. If anyone else wants to say anything, comment.
Yeah. So Nadisha, you mean every time a thought comes, just don't make a story, right? Just let it be.
No, hang on. See, you can't force this, Samudra, right? One mistake we have made in the past is we are trying to hurry up and get to nirvana, force ourselves to let go. None of that can happen, because this is a what do you call a paradigm shift, a rewiring that has to happen automatically. It cannot be orchestrated. It cannot be done. It needs to happen. So you have to let it happen. In order to let it happen, you start observing. You start observing whenever you understand that you are in an emotional state, right? Now, I hardly observe this when I'm happy. When I'm happy, I'm happy, right? I start observing this when I'm not happy, which is most of the time. Or most of the time, if you notice, you are either irritated or frustrated or anxious or scared or something or this or that or the other. That is the point when you need to observe what is the real-time data, what is the story. Can you see the difference? That's all. Just do that. Just observe. Whatever is going to happen in the brain, the rewiring, paradigm shift, nirvana, it will all happen automatically. You have to let it happen. You can't make it happen. Yep. All you can do is observe. Thanks for that, Samudra. Good question. Anyone else? I think Auntie Anoja's battery gave out. I can't get through. So, Professor Kohli.
Is there anyone with questions? Is there anyone in the audience with questions? Any more? Okay, it looks like everyone is clear, Nadisha. So maybe we can end the session if there are no questions.
I think so, yes. Professor Kohli, over to you.
Okay, Nadisha. So thank you very much for that beautiful talk, delivered with so much of eloquence, and above all, there's so much of life in the way you deliver these talks, lively and a lot of humor. And you have clearly displayed the depth and breadth of your knowledge on the subject. And I also like the way you integrated the very basic science we had learned in our O-level days, as you pointed out, the biology, and with the teachings of the Buddha, which Buddha had discovered on his own without anyone's help, without any teachers, and way back over 2,600 years ago. It's really amazing. Science is only discovering these only now. It's only a minute fraction, but the Buddha had seen it all, over 2,600 years ago. And you also pointed out about the Venerable Dr. Punnaji. And I must mention that I had the fortune of listening to some of his talks, thanks to a friend of mine, one Dr. Sarat Seniratne. He's a consultant obstetrician and gynecology batchmate of mine. He was a Thomian, but now practicing in Cayman Islands, but he has made a complete transformation of all his attitudes. He's a Buddhist by birth, but of course, deep into the real Buddhism. And he sent me this link. Hey, Kolita, you listen to this. And I listened to it quite casually. And after that, from time to time, whenever I got the opportunity, I used to listen to some of these Venerable Dr. Punnajiva's thero. I think it's available on YouTube. If you type Venerable Dr. Punnajiva, you'll come across his talks. As you pointed out, very simple and very simple way he discusses, particularly the Paticca-Samuppada. So thank you, Nadisha, once again for a very beautiful talk, delivered with so much of clarity and simplicity. And just one announcement we need to make. That is the talk for the next Saturday. That will be by Dr. Soma De Silva, again one of our board members. And she's going to speak to us on anger, neurobiology, and the Buddhist perspective. So it may have some relevance. I think it's a spin-off from today's talk. We can see how anger works. You mentioned about emotions. The real time, something happens, some input from one of our 6 sense bases, and how anger can arise as an emotion, the recognition of emotion, and then what to do with it. So the neurobiological aspects and the Buddhist perspective, that will be an interesting talk. That will be 13th Saturday, same time, 4:30 in this same forum. And nothing else. And so shall we convey our Anusasana, whatever the merit he had gathered by preaching the Dhamma, listening to the Dhamma, and discussing the Dhamma, as well as by observing the Tisarana and the Panchasila. May all this merit be conveyed to the Devas and our departed relatives, friends, and so on. Can I ask Samudra to recite that, please?
Akasatta cha bummatta devanaga mahittika punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu lokasasanam. Akasatta cha bummatta devanaga mahittika punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu desanam. Akasatta Jabummata, Devanaga Mahitika, Punyantang Anmoditva, Chiran Rankantu Mampananti. Imina Punya Kamena, Mame Bala Samagamo, Satan Samagamo Hotu, Yavanipana Patya. Imina Punya Kamena, Mame Bala Samagamo, Satan Samagamo Hotu, Yavanipana Patya. Imina Punya Kamena, Mame Bala Samagamo, Satan Samagamo Hotu, Yavanipana Patya.
Sadhu, sadhu.
So thank you very much. Yeah. Somebody want to say anything else?
And Nadisha, I wish you a speedy, I mean, your spiritual aspirations have to be, attained at, the earliest, because you give knowledge to so many people. And it's incredible that, how you give it. It's not the knowledge, it's how you present it. So I wish you a speedy enlightenment.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu,
Okay.
sadhu.
Right. So thank you very much, everybody. Till we meet next week to a talk by Dr. Somadi on anger, the neurobiology, and the Buddhist perspective. Thank you very much.
Theruvan Saranai.
See you.
Thero Sanai. Bye.